Welcome to the Kaiser Report. I'm Max Kaiser. You know, councils here in the UK are calling for tougher laws to police aggressive beggars. Finally, no longer will the bankrupt beggars be shaking us down for yet more handouts and bailouts every time we pass the city. No longer listening to them plead for more money printing and free credit facilities. We're sick and tired of all the bankrupt beggars harassing us every time we pass one of their toll booth cons. Like this famous one. Hey, I'm Jamie Dimon. Oh, look what I found. It's your banking system that I found trashed on the ground. Before me, give me $1 trillion and I'll give it back. Give me $1 trillion. I want another trillion. More trillions. Give me. Oh my God, he's taking the kiddie's piggy bank, our paychecks, your granny's pension. Give it to Jamie. Your rail system, your healthcare, education system. Give it to Jamie. He wants it all. Give me. Your postal system, transport system. Yeah, give it to Jamie. Take it, everything, you freaking loser bastard. Yeah, give me your money, all of it. That's all Jamie has to say. Jamie. Stacey?
Well, Max, yes, I thought of this fact that here in the UK, the councils wrote to the government and asked them for greater policing powers to stop the influx of beggars, they say, from Romania and Bulgaria. The headline reads, councils call for tougher laws to police aggressive beggars. Councils across Britain have controversially called for new measures to deal with antisocial behavior as they prepare for an influx of Romanian and Bulgarian migrants. Now, of course, one of the cons that they're talking about is when they throw the gold ring on the ground and it's a fake gold ring, and they say, oh, look, I found this gold ring. Will you give me 20 quid or 50 quid for it? And it turns out that it's fake. Well, this is what I thought. Why are we not calling for antisocial behavior orders against bankers when they throw the Dow down on the ground or the FTSE down on the ground, and they throw it down and they say, look, your economy's crashing, give us some money and we'll make it better.
You have a good point there. The crashes are not driven by unforeseen market activity. The crashes are engineered to put in place this wealth confiscation that we've seen. So the 2008 crash was engineered for this purpose. The incredible engineering of the poor in the UK being disenfranchised, that's not by accident. That's engineered austerity, engineered poverty. That's the government colluding with banks to disenfranchise an entire population for the purpose of what you might call an economic or financial holocaust. That's their purpose in life. That's what Osborne and Cameron and Mark Carney are there to do.
I'll show you some aggressive begging in this just little tweet here from Convert Bond. $10 trillion U.S. bank deposits are earning 3% less than they did in 2008. That's $300 billion a year of lost interest income. So apply this across all of the savers and pensioners in the world. Here we had the bankers begging for money, begging, going to the Fed, beg, give us 0%. James Cramer was on CNBC saying, you don't understand, you're an academic, give us some money, you freak.
Right, $300 billion stolen from pensioners and savers for the benefit of the kleptocrats running the banking system. Cameron gets on TV. He says we need to do this to stimulate the economy. And yet, the debt in the UK hits new all-time highs every single month. So clearly his idea is failing. Unless you look at it as a wealth confiscation scheme, then it's succeeding magnificently. And of course, when the real estate bubble pops, as it most assuredly will, then a whole new generation of Brits will find themselves sinking in the Thames.
Instead of kleptocrats, I think we could come up with a new word of begocrats. They're the begocrat class. They beg and shake us down, and people give them money because they just are so violent and aggressive with their begging. The holding hostage of Congress back in 2008 by Hank Paulson on their behalf was one of the most remarkable aggressive behaviors of begging. And yet we've never brought in, nobody has suggested we bring in ASBOs to stop this sort of aggressive behavior, shaking us down constantly.
Well, you have a great example of it here in Britain. You've got the big 6 energy companies that are gouging customers, and like the banks, stealing money. So the government, in response, has decided to give the poor peasants $50 or £50 break on their energy bills. To just shut them up. This is what it's all about. Just shut up, you frickin' ugly Brit. I'm disgusted that I have to lead your country here at number 10 Downing Street. You repulse me. George Osborne, basically if he had a chance, he would just line everybody up in Britain and whip them to death because he's a psychopathic masochist. But he'll throw them 50 quid and say, as long as you don't bother me, here's 50 quid. Shut up, you stupid British idiot.
Well, let's look at some other aggressive behavior by the begging class, the begocrats. And this is from Ian Fraser, a tweet from him. You have 24 hours. RBS bullies firm of chemists. Disgraceful behavior from a bailed out bank. So RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, is a bailed out bank. It's 82% owned by the UK taxpayer. And they have basically driven a company called TriHealth, which is a pharmacy, into bankruptcy through this mis-selling of interest rate swaps, of course, which drained £1.2 million out of the chemist's bank account. And then GRG, of course, Global Restructuring Group, the thug section of RBS, shook them down and shaking them down. There's a audio recording of it, but I think I have a better interpretation of it. Basically, RBS calls this chemist, and the chemist tries to tell him, well, you're the one that bankrupted me through this mis-selling of these interest rate swaps. And they're like, you've got 24 hours. Come up with the money. Come up with the plan. Give us the money. Give us the money now.
Oh, yeah, there's RBS. Let me give you an example. RBS is there, and they got this chemist, and they give him the garrote. And they go, come on, I'm gonna kill you! I'm gonna kill you! This is my impression of RBS doing business with one of their customers. I'm gonna kill you! Okay, so there's the chemist. These are the British people. They're being strangled to death using financial terrorism by Royal Bank of Scotland, who's owned by the very chemist. So the very chemist is being killed, strangled to death by his mother. It's infanticide. They're killing their kids. There's like bears eating the young, and that's what RBS is doing. They stalk the British landscape like a Goliath, looking for 4 suckers to wrap their noose around and kill them because they're out of control serial killers. Royal Bank of Scotland. Who will put this disease out of its misery? Will George Osborne? No, because he's busy pole dancing down at the club at the Mason's Lodge, looking at my boobies. Look at my boobies. I'm Jordan Babbitt.
So turnover at this chemist has dropped by 70% because, of course, they have these disgusting, gross, aggressive beggars outside the shop every day, these goons saying, give us our money, give us some more money, give us some more money, shaking down. Let's look at how much they've shaken down this one firm. In 3 years under GRG, the Global Restructuring Group, the company claims to have paid £130,000 in fees to GRG, including £1,000 monthly charge, £70,000 in invoice financing, £50,000 for an outside turnaround advisor, £12,000 in valuation fees, and £40,000 in additional interest payments. It has an outstanding interest rate hedging product that has so far cost about £700,000. So this is the aggressive begging, the begocrat class. Like the start of the show, we were talking about the councils who are trying to outlaw and ban and have more aggressive policing powers against aggressive beggars. And yet here, this state-owned bank is allowed to aggressively beg and shake down every single SME across the country.
Well, call RBS on the phone, customer service. Ding, 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 ding. Hello, RBS? Na, 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 na. What? We're gonna come over to your house and break your legs. They're mafiosos. They're leg breakers. They're leg shaker breakers. They're Tony Soprano. They're the Godfather. They're they're Costa Nostra. They're mafioso. They make the people down in Parma, Italy, look like frickin' Mother Teresa.
Well, a lot of those aggressive beggars that the councils are looking for more powers against are actually organized. They're organized begging gangs. So you talk about RBS, and this is part of this organized begging gangs here in the banking system. Now we go to Japan, where they have a similar story coming out in this headline. Japan's Yakuza mobsters becoming Goldman Sachs with guns. The Yakuzas there are the equivalent of the Global Restructuring Group at RBS. Experts say the Yakuza are branching far outside their traditional business into everything from insider trading to funding business startups. Insider trading has become huge. You can make much more money manipulating stocks than extorting businesses, says Jake Edelstein, a crime writer whose best-selling memoir, Tokyo Vice, is set to become a Hollywood movie, and he calls the biggest one of the Yakuza, which is Yamaguchi Gumi, he calls them the Goldman Sachs with guns.
Well, the Yakuzas, they got all those cool tattoos all over their body.
Well,
and
yeah.
I'd like to see George Osborne with all those tools, those, on his moobs, his man boobs.
And his little pinky.
And his little pinky, his little, what he does there after hours. I'd like to see him get those full body tattoos and see how that goes over with Sarah, his wife. I'm sure she'd love that.
In fact, they point out that the Yakuza, because they make so much more money acting like Goldman Sachs, that they're actually getting rid of their tattoos and they're donning suits and they're not cutting off their pinkies so much.
What about a tattoo that looks like a suit? They can just go to a board meeting and you got a full tattoo, looks like a suit, and just shake down people. I think that's what they do here in the RBS. But obviously, the point being that the gangsters at RBS are putting the mafia out of business. So the mafia, in order to compete, they've had to adapt the practices of Royal Bank of Scotland, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan by manipulating markets, shaking down people, using extortion, and all those types of techniques. So that's one thing that America has exported to the rest of the world is banking mafia techniques.
Well, they also point out something that is kind of absurd here in a way, because listen to this. Unlike their foreign counterparts, Yakuza are legal groups with offices in major Japanese cities, and they have historically been tolerated by authorities, although there are periodic clampdowns on some of their less savory activities. RBS has offices right here, and the government, the authorities, operate the bank. So what are they saying that, unlike other counterparts across the world? Here, these are also official. We're becoming more like the Yakuza, I say, rather than the other way around. You saying we inspired them, but I think we've taken a page out of their book, and we're opening offices for our own Yakuza.
Well, how many times do you hear people on mainstream media say, well, what the bank's doing is legal?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's right, because they made crime legal. Just because they made the law open to committing extortion, and then, remember, everything Hitler did was legal. Everything George Osborne does is legal. However, the results are catastrophic. I don't think that's a good enough reason for the people to sit back and let themselves be financially violated.
Well, to conclude with the top of the show, here we have aggressive begging gangs operating at the bottom, at the middle, at the upper middle, at the top, at the very top. So we have aggressive begging gangs around the world, and I think we should put a stop to them. Whether they're Goldman Sachs with guns or some guy throwing a fake golden ring on the ground.
We are putting a stop to it with something called Bitcoin, which has come from the future to save us from the present. All right, well, we're out of time on that note, so thanks so much, Stacey.
Thank you, Max.
Stay tuned for the second half. A whole lot more. Welcome back to the Kaiser Report. Time now to turn to Ned Naylor Leyland of Quilter Cheviot Asset Management. Ned, welcome back to the Kaiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
All right, Ned, so talk to us about this German investigation into the alleged manipulation of gold and silver benchmark. What's going on there?
Well, it's been a while since we've discussed this story, Max. I think it's both the FCA in London and BaFin in Germany that are looking into this. Initially, the story in the mainstream media was about looking at the fix.
What is the fix?
Well, the fix is a twice daily setting of the price.
Who sets that?
London Bullion Market Association.
Who are they?
They're a bunch of bullion banks, which are the mainstream large banks. But I think the thing that's really interesting is that it will hopefully lead into other areas. When they talk about benchmarks, you've got the gold forward rate, you've got the silver forward rate, which is recently canned. But also, I think from there, once people become more aware of the issue of lack of transparency in the fixes and in these self-certifying markets, then hopefully it will lead to the bigger issue of gold obligations, the fractional reserve bullion banking system, the broader subjects which we've discussed over the years.
What is the point of the fix? What purpose does it serve?
Well, it serves to provide effectively a benchmark against which transactions can be set.
And usually
in
in
the
markets
market.
like the stock market, they'll have the closing price, and then the next day they'll say the stock closed at this such and such a price. In the gold market, they use this fixed price. They get together and they fix the price. Why don't they just go to a system where they use the closing price? Why do they have to get together and obviously rig the price? Because like LIBOR rigging or Forex rigging, which turned out, or energy price rigging, that London price of gold price is fixed. It's rigged. It's not fixed. It's rigged. Why don't they call it the London rigged price?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think the Germans seem to be a bit stronger on this, and they seem pretty clear that that's exactly what the problem is, and that things should be a lot more open than they are. But I think that this point feeds into a broader discussion which the CFTC have brought up recently, which is to do with the fact that the US and the European/London markets have different processes for dealing with the collateralization of the swap market and the physical market, and hopefully in gold and silver as well. Well,
let's talk about the CFTC for a second, because they just have wound up a look into silver price manipulation.
Yeah.
And Bart Chilton, who is their stalking horse, the guy who would go on the media outlets and say, we're looking into price fixing in silver and price manipulation in silver. We've got the smoking gun. You have Andrew Maguire, who provided them with concrete, irrefutable evidence that this manipulation was going on. In the end, they dismissed the investigation. Bart Chilton left, as I predicted he would, after he fulfilled his role as poster boy or pinup girl or whatever his stalking horse boy, whatever his role was supposed to be.
Yep.
And life goes on. So none of the riggers in LIBOR or the gold and silver or Forex, there's no justice to these folks. They simply continue doing as they're doing. So why do you believe that the Germans are going to take this seriously? Is it because they've asked for their gold to be delivered to them, perhaps, and the banks in the US and the UK and elsewhere have told them that they can't have their gold? Or are they getting more serious about gold?
Well, I think that relates to it. I think it's clear that the fact that Germans are taking it seriously has to relate to this. But I think the CFTC situation is a very interesting one. You know, you've had 3 out of 5 commissioners leave, the head of enforcement leave. The head of enforcement left a week after that silver investigation that you referred to was closed. And I think it does relate to, I sort of tried to touch on it earlier, effectively what's come up within the banking system recently, and in fact the banks are even considering suing the CFTC about this, Max, is this issue of where they're booking trades. So they might well be doing trades in the US, but they're booking them through London. This brings up this whole issue of hypothecation, which you've discussed previously, which is that what they're doing is they're trading in the US, they're booking their trades through a London subsidiary because there are no rules on hypothecation of the underlying collateral within the London system.
Right,
so I think there are a lot of issues that are coming together here, and the first step for me is the fact that at least openly there is a discussion of investigating the fix. So I think that's the first stage towards hopefully the unravelling of what is a broader problem.
Right, the hypothecation or rehypothecation, as we've talked about in this show, in London, unlike other financial jurisdictions, it's possible to lend the same security an infinite number of times and call that collateral to be the basis of some other derivative trade. So you can do a trade in a derivative that in itself has no intrinsic value really, it's just mathematical gobbledygook, and you collateralize it with something that's already been sold 10 times over again. So this is really, reminds me of the papacy where they're trying to count the angels on the head of a pin. I mean, there's nothing there, and yet they've got the City of London held hostage. What is their leverage? Are they still, in the City of London and the regulators, the fake regulators here in the city, are they still claiming that unless you give us all this free money, we're going to blow up the system? They're doing the old suicide banker trick. Is that still the case, or have they got some new tricks up their sleeve?
Well, I think relating to the precious metals market, I think that this issue to do with the CFTC and the cross-border policy is not just about precious metals, it's to do with the broader derivative market too. But there is a degree to which they're now threatening the CFTC themselves and saying you can't make us prove collateral in a different marketplace. But clearly it is a relevant discussion because global markets are international. And the fact that they are able to effectively use the London dustbin for trades they're doing in the US.
The London dustbin.
Well, you might want to describe it as that. If there isn't transparency on the collateral that underlies the booking of the trades in London,
London becomes a toxic debt heap.
Well, I think it's clear that a lot of the big problems that we've seen in the last 5 years have been run through London subsidiaries. And this is an issue the CFTC are trying to deal with here. Whether they're really meaning to deal with it, Max, or not, I think is a different question. But the thing that has been brought up by Gary Gensler, who's also leaving at the end of the year, is that they will be requiring the big swap dealers, the big banks, to prove collateral in London, in Europe, against trades which they're doing in the US. And I think it's a very interesting subject, which isn't well understood or probably covered that much in the media.
All right, Ned, so you're in the business. So this has a direct impact on your business. So you're not saying, you're not a whistleblower. You're not being overly critical of this situation so much as you are trying to draw awareness to it, because this is your bread and butter. I mean, this is what you deal with every single day, for better or worse. The industry is the industry. So how do you deal with clients? I mean, you're dealing with clients all day long, and yet it's an open secret that there are these huge problems. So on a pragmatic basis, how do you approach that?
Well, I think it's a difficult one, but I think that so long as people understand that gold and silver to a degree are the denominator of fiat money, and I think the issues of what money is, BTC, Bitcoin's playing into this too. People are becoming more aware of this. I think a lot of people are starting to understand that there are big problems there. I think a lot of it's just about communication and making people understand that gold is a hugely liquid global marketplace. As I say, it's the denominator for what we call money nowadays, but really
Is there an incentive by players, agents in this market to artificially keep the price of gold and silver cheaper than they would ordinarily be if they were not present manipulating these indexes?
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make, which is that yes, the gold and silver are the denominators of sterling, the dollar,
And who
et cetera.
benefits? The fiat currencies.
Of course, absolutely. But that's long been the case. This is not a new thing. I mean, that's always been the
We've
case.
talked about this for a long time, and the point is always from those who watch these shows saying that, well, the resources of the Bank of England and others is infinite. They can sell paper contracts into infinity. There's rehypothecation. We just mentioned that.
Yeah.
So they can use the same collateral to collateralize a naked short sale of a gold or silver future to the moon. At what point, or how do we know, or is there any way that the jig is finally up? What will indicate that they have run out of airstrip and they cannot continue this fraud any longer?
Well, I think that's always been a question that had to be answered in paper currencies, which is there comes a point at which the public become aware of the unbacked nature of what they're using as money. And this is where the issue of Gresham's Law comes in.
Gresham's Law being?
Gresham's Law being bad money, which is losing purchasing power, drives good money out of circulation.
But the public is benefiting from a house price bubble and a stock market bubble. Not the entire public. There's a small percentage of the public that is benefiting. Certainly the people who report in the media are benefiting. There's a huge swathe of people who are being victimized by this, who are suffering austerity for no apparent reason other than to keep this fraud going. But there is this privileged class that's benefiting from the fraud. So they're not going to blow the whistle on it. They're perfectly happy to continue to live in this bubble world. So they're not complaining. They're cashing in a way that's probably been unseen ever in the history of modern finance. We've never seen as much money fraudulently deposited into the hands of crooks vis-a-vis the central banks than ever before in history. Was that an unfair characterization? Or?
I wouldn't say it was unfair at all, Max. I think that you make a fair point, but I would also say that clearly that is only a small proportion of the public. Most people are eating substantially higher rates of real loss of purchasing power. I'm cautious about using the word inflation because of how people look at that, and they look at CPI and RPI, which of course are government-produced numbers. But I think loss of purchasing power is something that people understand well. Most people are losing purchasing power year on year, and they're aware that there is a divergence between what they're being told and what they're seeing in their lives. And I think that there is a growing realization of these problems. Gold and silver hasn't reflected it in terms of their price, denominated in dollars in the last 2 years. But again, that's a little bit like the mid-70s, where we were pitched between 74 and 76, this disinflationary environment. We had the world's biggest monetary experiment in 1971, where we came off the effectively the backing of the dollar, $35 an ounce, the biggest experiment in monetary history. And for 3 years, people panicked about it, and the gold price went up. And then for 2 years, the banking system convinced everyone that it wasn't a problem anymore, and there was a disinflationary bias, and things were okay.
Okay, let me ask you this. We've had experts on the show recently, and they said that you can tell that the money printing's out of control if you look at things like the art market. Art market trading at historic highs, prices zooming out of control. That's where all this money is going. It's not going into loans, it's not going into small, medium enterprises, it's going into speculation and art, obviously house prices in London and elsewhere. So that's really the real inflation, and as you point out, it's loss of purchasing power ultimately, because at the end of the day, wages are stagnant, and you've got all of this loss of purchasing power, which results, and on the retail level, portions of items in stores are shrinking, the shrinkage problem, et cetera.
Sure.
So we've got about 30 seconds left. You mentioned Bitcoin earlier. As I said, you're on the front line. You're dealing with customers.
Yep.
You on one hand, you want them to be in sound money. You want them to be in gold, silver, mining stocks, look cheap. And at the same time, you've got this quandary going on where there's a total regulatory disconnect. Are customers coming to you asking about Bitcoin now?
I wouldn't say so. I think it's still quite a narrow market at the moment. I think there are certain barriers to entry in terms of understanding, but it's possible that will happen in the future.
So, Ned Netherland, thanks so much for being on the Kaiser Report.
My pleasure, Max.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Kaiser Report with me, Max Kaiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Ned Netherland. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Kaiser Report. Until next time, Max Kaiser saying bye, y'all.